All right, well, good evening, everybody. Today is February 8th, 2020. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting of the Burlington Historic Preservation Commission to order. Due to the corona pandemic, this meeting is being held via the Zoom platform. Just as a side note, this is being recorded for future listening. If you are having any technical or difficulties connecting, please contact Jamie Lawson at 336-380-7064 for support. For tonight, as usual, public comments that wish to address the commission in this meeting, please indicate that you wish to do so by using the raise hand feature in Zoom, or if you are listening by phone, press *9 and our meeting host will notify me that you wish to speak. Anyone who speaks must give their name and address for the record. So at this time, I'd like to confirm that all commission members and staff members on the agenda are present and can hear me. Okay. And Jamie, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Ulis,
Here.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Here.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Here.
Josh Adkins,
Here.
Wendy Geis,
Here.
Lori Brine,
Here.
and Christina Meinking.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and nobody is absent. No one's, so we're all here. All right. So first on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from January 11th. Did all the commission members get a chance to look over them, and is there any discussion or anything that needs to be added? No. Okay.
I didn't see anything.
Okay. Did anybody else see anything, or were we all okay with how they looked? Okay. All right. So then I need a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th.
I moved.
That's so moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Wendy Geis, I'll second.
Okay. All commission members in favor, please. Do we want to state the names, Jamie, or just as I?
I'll just do a quick roll call.
Okay, that works.
And Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So we also have the meeting minutes from the January 28th, 2022 HPC subcommittee meeting. Are there any comments or questions from the members or any discussion? Okay, well, I'm gonna assume the quiet means that we're all good with it. All right, so then Jamie, can you do a roll call for me?
Certainly can.
We need to make a motion to approve.
That's right. All right, so I need a motion to approve.
I just did it.
Okay, sweet. Second,
I second.
okay. All right, Jamie, will you do a roll call vote,
Sure.
please?
Chair Ulis,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving right along. So we only have.
Before we get too much further, I just want to make an announcement. For those who are on the attendees list, Conrad is attempting to admit you all into as panelists. So if you're seeing that request, accept it, because I'm seeing a couple notes that they can't get through. So you should have gotten a request, admit that, accept that invitation, and you'll be allowed as a panelist. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're fine. I want to make, that's actually a good thing that everybody can join in. Okay, so we only have one case for tonight. So Jamie, will you present that case for us, please?
Sure, let me just get to the share screen here. And I'll just say that the information that I provide to the commission and to the public is the truth to the best of my ability.
Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, I need to ask, are there any conflicts of interest with this application? Okay.
Okay, can everyone see the agenda item number 1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we received a request from Rachel Blanc, she's located at 2416 Glencoe Street, for a rear screened-in porch at her property in the dimensions of 12 feet by 18 feet. This is a rear screened-in porch. Our staff report includes the relative facts of finding, as well as the associated maps and the supporting materials for this application. Staff recommends approval of the request. Scrolling through to get to Rachel's application. Rachel is on the call. Let me see. Yep, there she is. Rachel is on the call and can, at this point, I'll turn it over to her to describe her project. Rachel, do you attest that the information that you're providing to the commission and to the public is the truth to the best of your ability?
I do.
Okay, so just let me know if you want me to flip through anything. I've got all of your materials up.
Sure. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. So a little bit of background on the project. If you just scroll down to the, I think the second page, third page just has kind of a general description of the project itself. If you go back up to the written portion there. Thank you. So the proposed project will add a screened-in porch to the back portion of the property within the sight lines from the street. I would say the majority of the houses out here in Glencoe do have some kind of outdoor screened living area that was added to their property. And this is similar to, in fact, it's a replica of the screen porch next door. So the porch will be wood framed, painted to match the existing structure. There will be no changes to windows on the property, no changes to entry or exit from the property. We will be utilizing one door that already exists, and you can actually see it behind me on the property. I think everything else is in there. The roof will be a hipped roof. Again, same as the hipped roof next door on the screened-in porch next door, and will be V5 gavel loom like the rest of the roof covering on the rest of the house. So if you want to scroll down, Jamie, you can kind of see here so if you look here on the very top picture there is a little added porch thing there. That is not original to the property. That was added because there was a door that was there at the time that this portion of the house was raised up and added to the back of the property. It is a kitchen that sat between two other properties and had been lifted up, put on a new foundation, and attached to the house in the early thousands when the house was originally restored. So if you scroll down, yep, right there. Thank you, Jamie. There you can see that that's the porch next door that this will replicate. And you can see in the Google Earth screenshot there where the location of the porch will be, again, within the sight line of the house from the street.
Want me to just highlight that a little bit better for those who can't see
Thank
it?
you.
Let's see. I can't use black, I suppose. It is right here where I'm kind of drawing in yellow.
And again, that is not to scale. My Google and my paint ability is not up to stuff on that. But I do have engineering plans. So if it continues scrolling down, that will actually show the dimensions of the porch as attached
If I
to the
do
property.
This, will that work? Okay. I got to clear my annotate, otherwise my little porch will continue here, but
So that's the layout. So there's the foundation plan for it and the floor plan. And as you can see, there's an existing door, an existing window. None of that is changing.
there's not going to be, there will not be any rear stairs or
No.
this is all an internal access.
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct. And you can see that from these elevation drawings from the back. Additionally, Preservation North Carolina has provided their approval of this. As you know, out here, we have to get Preservation North Carolina approval in addition to the HPC.
Hey, I think that includes everything that I received in the packet.
Open to any questions any of the commission members might have.
Okay. Any commission members wish to comment on this application?
It's Wendy, guys. I just have a comment. You will love it. We spend so much time on our screened-in porch. So it was already there when we moved in, but you will love it.
Good. Thank you.
Any other commission members? Okay. All right. So at this time, we're going to allow public comments. When you do comment, please state your name and address for the record. Do we have any?
I can just tell you that staff has not received any emails or calls regarding this application. If there's any members of the audience, either as a panelist or as an attendee, if you're interested in asking questions, either of the applicant or otherwise, please use the raise hand function or dial *9 if you're on the phone. Okay, I see one panelist with their hand raised. I'm trying to see who that is. Okay, that's Yvonne Whitley.
Yes. And I just had a question. And it's good to know that the porches, the back patios, screen patios are existing in the Glencoe area. I was just curious if the applicant chose to add some steps that led out to the backyard, would that be permissible as an addition? Just thinking forward.
I think I would have to go through another process of making that request, as that would be another alteration to the design at that time. I don't intend to do that at this moment. It's a little steep going down, toddler. That's not a great idea. But to the extent I need to, that would be another application to this commission.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, either by the panelists, attendees, or anyone else from the public.
Okay. All right. So since there's no comment for the applicant, Ms. Blanc, do you have anything in closing you'd like to say? Are you good?
I think I presented all I need to present today. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to review the findings of fact. Do I have those? I think I actually have those. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'll set myself up here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and has everybody seen the findings of fact?
I can switch to the binder here also, so folks can see the findings and facts that staff has included.
Okay. Do I need to read all those?
It's generally been the commission's
Okay.
preference to read them. I know that's kind of lengthy
That's
here.
all right. Not a problem. All right. All right. So B5-1, the location of a terrace or patio should complement the character of the site and the historic structure. B5-2, a terrace or patio should be designed so that it can be built or removed without damage to the historic structure or adjoining properties. B5-3, appropriate paving materials are stone, brick, or tile. The choice of materials should complement the adjoining historic structure. B5-4, historic landscape features such as major trees should be retained and protected when a terrace or patio is constructed. B5-5, the removal of the historic building materials to allow for the construction of a terrace or patio is not allowed in most cases. C1-3, architectural components and details that are not appropriate to the historic character of the structure should not be added. The owner should never try to make the building look older than it is by using details belonging to a previous period. C8-3, the pattern, arrangements, and dimensions of doors and windows on the principal elevations should be retained unless restoring the appearance of the structure to its original design. On other facades where it's not easily visible from the street, new openings should be proportionately the same as existing openings with matching elements. Window and door openings should not be enlarged or reduced to fit stock windows or doors. C9-2, storm windows and doors should blend with the building rather than appear to be tacked on. The shape and general appearance should match the existing window or door as closely as possible. Storm doors should have full view glass with no meeting rails or muntins. Storm windows should have a meeting rail which aligns the meeting rail of the window to which it is applied. C9-3, raw metal storm window and door frames are not appropriate. The frame should be painted wood or painted or baked enamel finished aluminum. When possible, interior storm windows are encouraged. C11-1, if built as part of the original structure, a porch and all of its features, decks, steps, handrails, balustrades, columns, brackets, spandrels, roofs should remain in their original state. Porches and steps should not be stripped of any original material or architectural features. If a porch is a later addition, but has become an important part of the building, then the porch and all of its features should be retained. C11-2, new materials used to repair porches should match the design and dimensions of the original materials as closely as possible. C11-5, no porch should be enclosed if the historic character of the structure would be destroyed. Examples, front porches should not be enclosed to create interior spaces. Whenever possible, existing infill should be removed to restore the original appearance. C11-8, porches may be screened if the framing is recessed and the screening is placed behind columns and balustrades. Screening should be designed so that it can be removed without damage to the historic structure. C12-1, the placement of color should be appropriate to the architectural style of the structure. C12-2, the placement of color should provide contrast between different materials such as shingles and siding and architectural elements such as trim and soffits if contrasting colors are appropriate to the style of the structure. D1-1, any addition should be located to the rear or the inconspicuous location at the side of a historic structure. It should not be attached to the front of the building. D1-2, an addition should be designed and constructed so that the character defining features of the historic structure are not radically changed, obscured, damaged, or destroyed. D1-3, structural additions should be subordinate and compatible with the original building form. They should not be taller than the original building. D1-4, imitation of an earlier style or period of architecture than the historic structure is not allowed. D1-5, structural additions should be compatible with the original building in terms of materials, scale, proportion, shape, detailing, roof form, windows, etc. D1-6, removal of or alterations to important architectural details on the historic structure to accommodate an addition is not acceptable. D1-7 windows in additions should be similar to those in the original buildings in their proportions and spacing. Okay. Did any commission members want to add to it or have any to the findings of fact?
I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Then, all right, so then I need a motion to approve the findings of fact.
So moved, Pennington?
Okay, I need a second.
Second, Mein King.
Okay. All commission members,
I'll do a quick roll call.
thank you very much.
Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So now comes the part of the application. So I need a motion to approve or deny or approval with conditions of the application.
Wendy Geis, I move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Russ Peeler, second.
Okay, Jamie, will you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay, so the application is approved, Ms. Blanc. So Jamie will be processing your COA paperwork and will give you all the necessary stuff that you need to do your addition.
Thank you, as always. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hey, good luck with your project.
Okay. What we got next here? All right, so Jamie, do we have any new business? Oh, I mean, we do.
Yeah, just quickly, in terms of the new business, we have, the new business is the update for the design district standards. We have selected a consultant to work with us on the update. We are in the midst of reviewing the contract, and we expect the standards to be completed mid 2022.
Okay.
So we'll keep you all informed on how that's going, and appreciate everybody's input. We're looking forward to a really exciting and well-needed project.
Mhm. Okay.
Amy, which consultant was chosen once everything analyzed?
So Walker team was?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So moving on to other business. Jamie, I know we have some items.
Yes. So we're up for other business. The first item up is the local historic district amendment. I'll just do a really quick, brief introduction. Included in the packet was a little staff memo that we prepared just to give a summary. So we received a request to amend the local historic district. There were 4 properties included in that request: 1004, 1010, 1016, and 1022 West Davis Street. Included in the memo is a discussion that this request is a legislative matter, to which the Historic Preservation Commission will provide a recommendation, which will then move forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately the City Council. So unlike the application that you just heard regarding the rear porch, this is a legislative matter, because this is considered an amendment to the local historic district, which is a zoning overlay. The other matter was a quasi judicial case where you're actually taking testimony, and as you heard, I swore the applicant in. In accordance with our Unified Development Ordinance, which is section 319E, an investigation report was prepared by Richard Grubb and Associates describing the buildings and the structures and the description of the local historic district. So you'll hear from Ellen Turco from Richard Grubb Associates shortly. She's got a PowerPoint presentation that she'll walk through. Her report, which it's all public information and everything is on our website, the packet of information in our binders. The report that Ellen's company and Ellen prepared was forwarded to the state through the Historic Preservation Commission for their 30-day review in accordance with our Unified Development Ordinance. Ellen's here. She'll be presenting shortly. And I just wanted to also say that property owners within 300 feet of the properties have been notified. And just in summary, you'll hear shortly later on, the Historic Preservation Commission at their January 11th meeting appointed a subcommittee, and there's a draft report that was also included in the packet from the HPC subcommittee. So we'll be hearing from them as well. I can also just say that we have received 81, I think I lost count. We've received a lot of letters from members of the public. Maybe some of you are on the call. All of the letters that have been received by staff have been forwarded to the HPC, the applicants, and are part of the public record of this item. So just in summary, again, this is a legislative matter. So the HPC is not voting in favor or not of this request. It's a recommendation, essentially, that would move to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission is also advisory, so they would be making a recommendation on the item as well. And then ultimately it'll be City Council who would vote in favor of a zoning request. So I guess I'll turn it over to Ellen at this point, and I can share my screen.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good place to start. Thanks, Jamie. Should I just go ahead and are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, just to introduce myself very quickly, I'm Ellen Turco, and I'm the principal senior historian at Richard Grubb and Associates. I've been working in historic preservation in North Carolina for about 20 years. I was assisted on this project by Martha Lauer, who's the former director of the Raleigh Historic Districts Commission. So she brought a unique perspective to this. I was also the staff for the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission for a while, and also served on the Wake Forest Historic Preservation Commission for 6 years. So I've seen all the different aspects of local government, local commission work, and your HPC chair is doing a great job going through all of keeping the meeting moving, because I know it's hard to do on Zoom. So also just wanted to thank Conrad Almedo and Jamie Lawson, who provided us with all the information that we asked for while we were writing this report. And also Alan Gant and Patrick and Emily Robertson, who are the homeowners making the request for removal, who were brought us to their properties and allowed us access, and were very helpful answering questions as well. Slide. So I'm not going to read all this stuff to you because I like PowerPoints with pictures and not words, but basically, what is the purpose of the study? The purpose of the study, the big picture purpose of the study was to assess the potential impacts of removing 4 individual properties, as we've said, 1004, 1010, 1016, and 1022 West Davis Street from the West Davis Fountain Place Local Historic Overlay District. The text on the page is basically directly from the contract. That was what the planning department charged us with answering these questions as we did our study. And just in case there's folks in the audience that aren't familiar with the area, and there probably aren't any, but these are the 4 parcels in question. Slide, there you go. And this is a not as good map, again, with the 4 parcels in question. You can see them called out. The yellow district is the National Register of Historic Places district. The blue is the local district, which was established in 1987. The National Register was 84, so close, but not at the same time. You'll see that they're not exactly the same, which is not uncommon in North Carolina, although it can be really confusing and annoying to those of us that have to explain why one property is in and one property is not. So one of the things we were tasked with doing is going and looking at these edges. I think just to have some broader context in decision-making of why some of these properties are not in the local district, but are included in the National Register district. So very quickly, there doesn't seem to be a reason that flows through all of those properties. They all seem to be excluded for different reasons. And many of them we couldn't exactly determine why. You'll notice that the churches at the end of the district on the right-hand side of your screen, First Presbyterian and Macedonia are not in the local district, but they are in the National Register district. The First Presbyterian at 508 West Davis was included in the district and then was removed at the owner's request in 1998. So just for some little history on that, that's about 10 years after the local district was formed. For whatever reason, they were asked to be removed. I'm not sure what that process was, but that parcel was removed. 630 West Davis, which you might not even notice is a parcel if you follow Peel Street and you keep going across West Davis. There's a little blue box down in there. That was landlocked parcel. It may have been included in the National Register boundary in error and then corrected for the local boundary. The Windsor townhomes, you probably all know where those are on Isley, were built in the 1990s. So they are part of the development is included in the local district. And I'm not entirely sure why the whole thing is not included or why any of it is included. So in 1987, when the district was created, maybe there was nothing on that parcel, or maybe it was vacant land, and the decision makers at the time wanted to have some control over what those things looked like. I don't know the answer to that. And you all have been around Burlington for a while, so someone on the commission might know the answer to that. East Willowbrook, so all the way, the only parcel on Willowbrook all the way. Jamie, if you can point to the very left-hand side of the screen, there you go. The blue cutout. Yeah, that's that's East Willowbrook address, and that is excluded. And that property is excluded from your local district. It is included in the National Register district, and it is adjacent to 1022 West Davis, which is one of the subject parcels that is requesting the removal from the local district. And we can go back to this map later if that's helpful to anyone. So next slide, Jamie, please. So just to bring everyone through very quickly and up to date, we can flip through these very quickly. This is going from east to west on West Davis Street. This is the first house that you will come to. It's 1004 West Davis, and it's the Robert Sharp house. This is the next parcel that you'll come to. This is 1010 West Davis. It is now vacant. It had a 1935 Tudor Revival property on it, a house on it. In 2020, a certificate of appropriate was applied for by the property owner, and that was granted for demolition of the house due to its condition. And if you look on that slide, the little houses that are sort of in the background, those are on the parallel street behind this property. So that's just a vacant parcel at the moment. Next. So we have 1016 West Davis. This is the Georgian Revival Roger Gant house. Next. This is 1017 Edgewood, and it shares the legal parcel with 1016 West Davis. So their backyards bump up to one another. And this house was built, not sure when, 80s or 90s. But it is within the local district right now. at your current boundary. This is 1022 West Davis, the Allen Gant house. There was another property again on the street behind on Edgewood Avenue that faced Edgewood, a Craftsman bungalow on the rear of this parcel. And again, a COA was granted in 2017 to demolish that bungalow, and that house is no longer there. Interestingly, neither of the houses that face Edgewood were accounted for in the inventory list of the National Register nomination. So I don't know if they just got missed or what the reason for that is. But that sort of brings you up to speed on the parcels and the houses that we're talking about. So I guess, the first sort of question is why is this historic district important? What qualities make it eligible for the National Register and consequently the local district? Because as we were doing our research, we determined that the National Register nomination is pretty much what was used as the report to designate the local historic district. So all of the reasons that it's eligible for the National Register are the same reason that it's important locally. So you'll see the National Register have criterion that you have to meet to be eligible, and I'll just go over these really fast. The district is important because it illustrates how the textile industry was a major force and driver of the economy of Burlington between 1890 and 1930. The district was home to the leading Burlington industrialists, professionals, bankers, merchants who were instrumental in the community's growth at that time. The Gant family was specifically noted in the National Register nomination as being locally significant, and the presence of those Gant homes there now illustrate that historical connection. Also, National Criterion C is the one that we call eligible for architecture. So if a district is eligible under C, it's usually because of the quality or the variety of its architecture. And this district has Burlington's best examples of many types of architecture from the period: Queen Anne, Colonial Revival, Tudor Revival, Craftsman, and Neoclassical. So that is a quick summary of why the National Register of Historic Places determined the district eligible and listed it. So the city asked us to weigh the following questions. How would removal of the properties affect and impact the district? Not physical removal of the properties, removal of them from the local historic district zoning. Let's be clear about that, because we're not talking about demolishing buildings in this report. Removal of these specific properties would erode the district's historical identity as the home of Burlington's most prominent industrialists. National Register criteria A and B, which we just referred to. So it would erode that connection to the history. The removal of these properties would be less impactful on criterion C, I think, because there are so many properties in the historic district that illustrate particular architectural styles and are very intact. So while these properties that we're discussing are very high style and very good examples, there's a good density of other good housing. So less impactful on that criterion C standard that we have. And also, the removal of these specific properties would erode the district's integrity, but it wouldn't destroy it. So I want to make a distinction between, eroding something that's there, diminishing it, but not say that removing these properties would just damage the district beyond recognition for the National Register. Another interesting thing about this particular request, that's particular to this request, is that the subject properties that we're talking about are next to one another. So it's basically one block, and they're on the edge of the district. So unlike the removal of parcels from the center part of the district, removal of these edge parcels would not leave holes or gaps in the district. You could still have a continuous boundary of properties if these were removed from the district. Next. Thank you. But what precedents would removal of these properties create for future requests for removal? That's sort of the big question, that we can't see the future, but removing them may be a catalyst for future requests for removal. And then if you were to get a request from someone who was in the center of the district, or multiple property owners that were in the center of the district and not on an edge, how would you respond to them? How would that request be treated when you can't have a zoning district with a hole in the middle of it? It's got to be a cohesive boundary. Next, please. Oh, this is a complicated one. What could occur on the subject properties if they were removed from the district? So the zoning, so if you want to get into detail, page 5.1 of the report talks about all the different zonings and what specifically, a little more specifically, what could be built on those properties. But right now, the zoning is medium density residential, MDR, with a historic overlay. So the question is, if that historic overlay were removed, what could be the result? And the result could be just an increase in density. It could drastically change the density of that block. The current MDR zoning permits 4.85 single family units per acre. And there's also a minimum lot area of about 0.2 acres. And there are other requirements as well. But when you remove the historic overlay, and you could have a much more dense development could occur than what's there now. Next, please. What are the financial impacts could the subject properties be if they are not removed? So for those of you that live in historic districts and even not live in old houses, you know that the maintenance and repair of these buildings can at times be more expensive than new construction. So one of the issues that we have to all face and look at is it more expensive to maintain and repair these historic homes? And that is often brought up as a criticism or an issue when property owners in historic districts have to meet design guidelines that would be different than, say, if you just could go to Lowe's and buy a replacement window that was vinyl or off the shelf or something like that. So the cost of maintaining the property is one of the effects of being in the historic district. How does the comprehensive plan address the removal of the subject properties? The comprehensive plan doesn't specifically address removal of properties from historic districts, but it's implicit in the comprehensive plan that historic preservation is seen as an essential, important part of Burlington's planning programs. The comprehensive plan specifically talks about historic preservation and ways to encourage the preservation of buildings, districts, groups of properties, individual landmarks, and landmarks through local protection. One of the other recommendations, as we were reading the comprehensive plan, was to support the historic rehabilitation efforts of private property owners. That's one of the goals of the comprehensive plan. So I think it is implicit in that plan that historic preservation is been elevated to be a part of that plan. So our report recommends continuing education for the historic preservation for the city staff and the property owners. When we interview the property owners, and there was a section in our report that I made an attempt to summarize my discussions with the property owners about what their concerns were and what difficulties they were having. Continuing education, which is easy to say and difficult to implement, I understand that, but of the staff, and the Historic Preservation Commission, which as a certified local government, you all have to do anyway, and also the property owners, just so that the process and the machinery works as smoothly as possible when you do have to administer and make judgments on COAs. Our second recommendation was to streamline city processes and improve the design standards. I understand from in Jamie's report earlier that that is already in progress and maybe can be done with a lot of community input, so that if there are specific sticking points, either things that the HPC has difficulty interpreting because they're not clear, or vice versa, the property owners have difficulty interpreting because they're not clear. This is a really good chance to make the design standards a workable document. Your design standards are good, but they certainly can be improved and can address some of the difficulties and challenges that weren't an issue 20 years ago when they were first written. And the last recommendation was to promote economic incentives for property owners, which is individual landmark designation, which can have an effect on property taxes. I think the subject properties in this particular request could potentially be eligible for that based on their significance to the district. They are a little bit different and special in historically and visually from the other buildings that are in the district. There are rehabilitation tax credits. There are tax benefits for donating conservation easements. And then I also put at the end of this local grants and creative ideas. I'm not sure what sort of local grants that you have that are available, or other creative ideas that could come from the commission or from property owners about what do folks really need to get some additional assistance in being good stewards in the National Register, in the local district. I think that's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions. There's a lot more detail in the report, but I think you all are familiar with the report and certainly the properties and these requests as well, as they originally came in, I think, last spring. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with all this stuff. I didn't want to talk too long, but I'm certainly here to answer questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Turco, for that. Are there any questions from the commission members for the consultant? Jamie, do you want to start with that first before we ask if there's questions? Don't have the applicant speak. Would that be easier?
I don't have any questions at this time for Ms. Turco. I'll turn it over to the HPC if you guys have any questions for her.
Do any commission members have any questions for her?
I don't have any.
Not here.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for your report, Ms. Turco, very much. I wanted to ask quickly about one of your early points. You said that the removal of these properties would affect the district less in terms of the variety and density of different architectural styles. I wonder if you could comment specifically on 1022 West Davis Street on that point, given that that is a pretty distinctive structure.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I certainly don't want it to seem that these are not very significant buildings, because I think when you drive through the district, they are visually very different from the others in terms of size, in terms of the scale, in terms of the landscaping. I mean, it clearly speaks to a different aesthetic. I hate to use the word fancier, but I'll use it. These buildings are fancier than some of the other ones in the other part of the district, which isn't a judgment on their quality. It's just a statement of fact. So I don't want you to interpret that. I have to be careful as that, that these buildings aren't valuable to the district, because they're very valuable to the district and they're called out in the National Register nomination as being valuable to the district. But there's 150-ish buildings there. So I think if they were removed, you still have a cohesive district. It's been eroded. You've lost your association with the Gant family, which is important. You've lost the association with this being the place that the business leaders of the time chose to build their homes. But you would still have a historic district that held together, I believe.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from commission members?
Do we want to ask if there are questions from the public for Ms. Turco?
Does look like Ms. Robinson has her hand raised, so I would like to be able to give the applicants the opportunity to ask questions of the consultant or state any comments that they would like to make as well. So Chair, would you like to hear from the applicants at this point?
Yes, I would.
Okay. You want to start off with Ms. Robinson first?
Yes, and she has her hand up. We can start with them and Mr. Gant.
Ms. Turco, it's great to see you again. Emily and Patrick Robinson, we spoke, I believe, back in August. And we want to say thank you for the work that you did on this report. It was not only adequately summarizing the concerns that we shared with you, but it was also very objective and interesting. And we enjoyed reading a lot of the history about the formation of the National Registry. So thanks again for all of the work you did. We do have 2 questions for you. The first one being, your report cites the removal of 508 West Davis Street in 1998 at the owner's request. And we were wondering if in your research around that subject, did anything point to a cascading event of other requests for removal after that request was made and approved by City Council?
It did not. And I never was able to find any sort of record about exactly what the nature of that request was. But no, it doesn't appear that there were any requests after that.
Okay.
Until now.
Thank you. Another thing that has, I think, surfaced in the last week especially is there seems to be a lot of concern within our community that if our applications for the LHO amendment are approved, that there's going to be a negative impact on property values. And we've read letters from neighbors and members of the public that are really concerned about that. And yet we don't see anything in your report that's directly pointing to that as a possible outcome of this. And so we wanted to ask you, does any of your research that you did for your report point to the possibility of this definitely happening?
I have to be careful about how I answer that because I'm not a real estate appraiser and don't have that sort of experience. There are some sources that I cited in the report about how local designation, national register designation can elevate property values over time. I don't have anything specific in the report about how removal would have examples of how what you're talking about, removing properties, would decrease the property values. And I also just, can't really make statements about, what would happen to your neighbor's value the next day if this were to go through. So all I can do is kind of summarize what I already have in there.
Mm-hmm. And when we read the report, where you were citing that there could be, the benefits in terms of property values for remaining within the district, that seemed to be applied to the applicant specifically, like a consideration that we might want to make for our property, that leaving it within the district boundaries could possibly elevate our property value. Is that correct?
Oops, sorry. Well, I think what I was saying is what the report says is that the historic district as a whole would supports property, supports stable property values.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all we wanted to ask.
All right. Thank you.
Terry Eulis, would you like to see if Mr. Gant would like to address the commission at this point as the other applicant?
Yes, because I think he was second, and yes, if he would like to speak, he's more than welcome to.
Let's see, Emily, do you have anything else you want to make, or you want to go first? You want me to go first? Doesn't matter.
Well, we did want to ask the questions of Ms. Turco, and I'm not sure, Chairman Eulis, how the rest of the meeting is going to be organized, but we have some comments that we'd like to share with the commission, and some questions for the commission. So if you could direct us as to how you want to run the meeting in regard to that.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is I'm gonna let Mr. Gant speak, and then I'll let y'all speak. I'm not going to do a time limit, but I am going to kind of, suggest that we move along. I'll then, and if all the commission members are okay with this, I'll let them ask any questions. Then I'd like to move on to any public comments, because I know we've got a lot. So I'm fine with
we also
that.
want to make sure that we also have the public have the opportunity to ask any questions for Ms. Turco as well too. So
It's going to be, I'm fine with that. Mr. Gant can go, and then y'all can.
So do you want any other public questions for Ms. Turco while she's here, and then we make comments, or?
I'm happy to stay.
Jamie, let me think. This is kind of, there's a lot going on.
I would say, this is my suggestion, and the chair and vice chair can chime in. Since we just had the report presented, we can see if Mr. Gant has any comments to the consultant, and then members of the public to ask questions to the consultant. We'll stick with the report first. And then after that, the applicants can provide just statements if they would like to make statements. And then we'll have statements from members of the public. So we'll ask questions of the applicants, of the consultants first. If that is agreeable with you, James, and
I'm fine. Brian, are you okay with that?
Yeah. So questions for the consultant from the applicants, and then from the public, and then statements from the applicants, and then from the public, correct?
That works. All right. So I guess we were on Mr. Gant, correct?
I don't have any questions of the consultants.
okay, if there's any members of the public who are in the panelists or the attendees list, if you have any questions for Ms. Turco on her report or presentation, please raise your hand.
I see Molly, I think, raised her hand first, then looks like Ian Baltudis raised second. So I'm sorry, Jamie, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
But I would say recognize Molly, and then Ian.
Thank you, Chairperson Eulis. My name is Molly Whitlatch. I live at 912 West Davis Street, which is within the 300 yard radius of notification. And my question for Ms. Turco, thank you also for your report. I thought it was very well done. With respect to the church that was removed at 508 West Davis Street, you said you don't have any information about the reason that was given for the removal, whether it was for cause.
I don't.
Okay. So is it fair to say that the risk, if a property is moved or is allowed to be removed without any cause, is that other property owners could then also seek removal without any cause or without any reason?
Yeah, I'm wondering about precedent and how, and that's probably not to pass the buck, more of a question for the city attorney of how that sort of thing would work. You're not making decisions, you're making recommendations to your local governing board about what they should do. I wish that I had more information about what the story was there with that one that got removed, but the records that Jamie Lawson and Conrad Olmedo were able to provide, it just, that was it, that it was removed at the request of the property owner.
Mm-hmm. And so back to your point about property values, if other properties request removal without cause, and the city has then set a precedent that allows that to happen, and additional properties are removed, that would impact the district to the extent that it would weaken it, possibly lose its designation, and then it would impact the values of all the properties within the district if those property values track the national research that has found that properties within a district retain their value better than other neighborhoods. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we discussed in the report and is about spot zoning, and this is probably, you know, something that your planning experts can help you with, but the district needs to have properties that are touching one another. You can't have a district that looks like polka dots. So the risk, if you carry this argument through, that folks would start asking to be removed from the district, if that were to happen, and you had a district that was no longer made sense as a zoning entity, it couldn't be a local zoning district anymore. And
Okay.
then the benefits that we're talking about, you know, would the district could be altered.
Right. And I have one other question about the comments that you made about the potential impact if these properties are removed, and the manner in which that block could be developed. You said it could possibly be developed at a much higher density rate. So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying if those properties are not in the district and those property owners, whether the current owners or some future owners, decided to develop that into townhomes or apartment buildings or something like that, there would be nothing to prevent them from doing that. They would, of course, have to comply with local ordinances, but because they're no longer in the historic district, they could be developed into a neighborhood like that. Is that right?
Yeah, they can be developed any way the underlying zoning would allow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see that I guess Helen Walton has come up, but may I go to Ian since he was next in line?
Well, the reason I raised my hand is that I can address the removal of the Presbyterian Church. I was chair of the commission at the time.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to hear that now?
Ellen can go ahead and I'll catch up afterwards.
Okay.
My question.
That's fine. You'll be next. All right. Yes,
This will
ma'am.
be brief. The Presbyterian Church requested a removal, and their logic was that they were not 50 years old at the time. And the National Register guidelines stated that the properties within the district ought to be 50 years or older, and they were not. And they had quite a building campaign going on, and they just said, we're newer, and the Catholic Church across the street is not in the district, and we'd like to be out. And so it was approved even by the state.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. That's thank you. Thank you very much for that information. Let's see. All right. So is she okay?
Again. Thanks.
All right, yeah. So Ian Baltudis, I live in the district at 702 West Davis Street. And I just had a quick question for the consultant. Appreciate your report. I was just curious, when you look at national trends, are you seeing historic districts shrinking, or are you seeing a desire from communities generally to protect and preserve an increasing portion of the historic properties in their community?
I think I can speak with the most knowledge about North Carolina, because that's where I've worked, and you know, you definitely there's certainly a lot of interest across the state in having local historic districts. It's something that the general statutes allow local governments to adopt these local districts. I think there's over 100 in the state of North Carolina, so I would say it's something that many municipalities with a historic district or with a concentration of historic buildings with an older downtown or an older residential area is one of, you know, local district designation is one of the things, along with National Register and tax credit and the Main Street program and all these things that are sort of in the toolbox of historic preservation. So if historic preservation is identified as something that is important to your community, then it would make sense that local designation, national register designation is something that you would pursue. In terms of how many are there in the country, are they growing, are they getting smaller? I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for the consultant? Do the commission members have any questions? Okay.
I'm not seeing anyone else with their hand raised, either as a panelist or as an attendee. So I think you're good to go.
Okay. So then I guess we will go ahead and move on to, is it questions for the applicants? I'm trying to keep myself in order here.
Yeah, I guess I would say I would just make a recommendation to have the applicants present any statements that they would like to make to address the commission and the public.
So I guess to the Robinsons and Mr. Gant, do y'all have any additional comments you'd like to say? And I guess I could start with the Robinsons if y'all.
We do, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Eulis, for allowing us to speak. Really, after seeing this, outpouring of letters from the public, really want to take this opportunity to clear things up for the record. And the first thing I'd like to say is that we are preservationists. We love this home and we love this neighborhood, and that's why we decided to move here and start a family. We purchased this home. It was in 2017. It had been sitting on the market for 2 years with no interested buyers. It was falling, it was showing signs of neglect. Yard was overgrown. It was going to be a massive project. But we saw it and we loved it and we had a vision for it. And we were eager to take this project on. And in the past 5 years, like, we have poured so much effort and blood, sweat, and tears into this house. I mean, we have painted about every paintable surface in this home. We've updated electrical, and this is stuff that we've done. I mean, we've redone the kitchen, redone bathrooms, we have redone, landscaping work, reglazed windows, replaced the roof, and it was all in an effort to preserve and enhance this home. Reading these letters and all the people that are on the call that seem to be equally passionate about preservation, that they're sharing that the COA process and being within this district has been a good experience, or that they're not having any issues with the COA process. I mean, I think that's great, but we haven't had that same experience. Ours has been negative, and I think it's really important for us to share that with everyone here, because it's important for our application. So let's kind of go back to when we first moved to the property in 2017. I mentioned that the yard was overgrown and it needed a lot of landscaping. So I was eager to take that project on. Within a few days of doing that work, I received a stop work order from the city that was threatening excessive fines and even in jail time, because one of my neighbors called the city and said that they felt that the work I was doing was going to need a COA. And mind you, I wasn't cutting down a 150-year-old noble oak tree that was historically relevant to the neighborhood. I admittedly cut down a bunch of crepe myrtle trees that were planted too close to the house, that were encroaching on the property, and so I did. But slap on the wrist, lesson learned.
Approval after the fact.
We submitted this approval. It got approved. But just for reference, I mean, that was our welcome to the district. That was our introduction to this neighborhood. So with that in context, fast forward a couple of years to 2021, and Emily and I, after doing all this other work, we realized that we've got a problem with our roof, and it's leaking. We've got standing water with water coming into the eaves, causing damage to the structure, and it's actually causing water intrusion into the home. So we're like, this is a nightmare. We're going to have to find a contractor that is willing to take on this scope of project, dealing with a flat roof and an old home. But we're able to find one and come up with a plan and say, all right, let's move on fixing this. But at the same time, you know, with our previous experiences, I know that this is going to need a certificate of approval. So I'm working with the city, kind of asking, like, there's got to be some sort of expedited process. You know, we've got a leaking roof and it's causing damage to the home. You know, how can we rush this through? And it turns out that we can't, because the UDO and the design standards are going to require a major COA to be approved before the commission, because there's a section of about 18 inches, 18 inches by a couple feet on the front of our house that is visible from the street. It's going to change from a rolled brown shingle that was installed in 1990 to a white material that we selected. So that was going to hold us up and keep us from repairing this in a timely fashion. So our hands are tied. But we submit our application. It goes before the commission. It's scheduled for the following month, and you know, fortunately, it gets approved. And literally the next day, we go and call the contractor and say, let's move. Let's get things scheduled and purchase some materials and go forward. Unfortunately, in the interim from when we met with the contractor and agreed to this scope of work to when we got the application approved, the cost of the project significantly increased just because of the cost of goods. And so this is a time of rapidly fluctuating price changes. I know that everyone on this phone call has experienced this over the past 2 years, either it be labor shortages, supply chain. It's out of our control. But in our experience, you know, this project, which was already a big project, significantly increased unnecessarily just because of this roadblock. You know, not only did the project increase in cost, but it also became more complicated because you know what else happened during that time? It kept raining. And I remember this because every time it would rain, I would feel like I was having a panic attack because we were having water come into our house. Yeah, so I kind of asked, like, what, you know, we finally got this, you know, the roof repaired, had to do additional work to fix some water damage to the roof and whatnot. But, you know, I asked, like, what did this COA process add? What value did it add? Because it did, you know, the delay did cost, you know, increase the cost. It allowed additional damage to occur to the home, increasing the scope of the repair. And it didn't add any sort of architectural, it didn't add any sort of structural or historical expertise. You know, so, you know, if this process, if it allows for, you know, standing water and a leaking roof to go unaddressed for several weeks, then and cause additional damage to the home too, I ask, is this even preservation? Because I would argue it's not. And furthermore, if that experience that I just shared with you guys, if that doesn't, you know, constitute reason or just cause for our application, then I would ask commission members that what would.
A couple other points that we'd like to have the commission consider and members of the public is that while we have applied for an LHO amendment to our property, you saw on the map that Ellen presented, our boundary will, our property will still remain within the National Registry boundaries. And it's still going to have historical significance to this community. We're still going to maintain it.
I mean, I'll probably still be up on the roof painting the eaves when you guys drive by the next few months. So, I mean, we love this house.
And the NRHP boundaries, that was the genesis for the formation of this district to begin with. So we find that still to be very relevant for the community. And it doesn't diminish any historical significance for our property. Another point that I think a lot of people on this call are probably going to want to speak on is the fears and concerns that they have that their properties are somehow going to be harmed or the property values are going to be diminished if our applications are approved. And we feel very confident that that will not be the case. And it's not the district boundaries, it's not the design standards, it's not the COA process that is adding value to the homes in this district. It's the hard work of individual property owners. And many of our neighbors they have worked so hard on their property since we've moved here 5.5 years ago, and they should be commended for that. And I want them to give themselves credit for the work that they're doing and have confidence that that hard work is the single biggest impact on property values. It's not an invisible district boundary that will protect their home. The design standards are only applied when somebody submits a COA application. They're not going to prevent a home from falling into disrepair or being neglected or overgrown or reduced to an unlivable state. They're only applied if somebody is sending you an application to review work that they'd like to do on their home. So they're not really protecting homes in this district from falling into disrepair. That concludes the statements that we'd like to make. We do have some questions for the commission, and Chairman Eulis, if you'd like to wait for questions until after Alan speaks, then we're happy to do that.
Okay, let me see. Mr. Gant, do you wish to speak?
I have some prepared comments. I'll be glad to do it whenever you want me to.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to be with you tonight. I want to first of all give a sincere thanks to the members of the Historical Committee and the city staff, all of which are really, really fine people who are trying very hard to do a really good job. I mean that sincerely. Jamie has just been absolutely terrific and has responded immediately, and I appreciate the openness by which has taken place. This conversation is not really about historical designation by the federal or city agencies. It's a conversation about the bureaucracy, the rules, the standards, and the adoption of new technologies, and the honor and the constitutional right of property owners to be able to do what their next door neighbor can do. We now learn on Friday of this past week that this is not a quasi-legal process, because the board is not going to render the final decision. You're operating as an advisory, and you will make a recommendation to the zoning board to either allow us to proceed or not. And so, quite frankly, it amazes me because we pleaded numerous times to have open conversations to discuss the feasibility of all the ramifications time and time again. And we never really did that. And this process has now been going on for over a year. Over a year it's taken us to get to where we are today. So let's talk for a second about those standards used in Burlington. And by the way, there are none for the federal designation of historical areas. The standards that I see on the website today, the majority of them were last updated in 1995. And yes, a contract has been discussed but not approved, and the contract is not signed. And we'll be really lucky if we even get the first feedback from the consultants in another 6 months. So think about it. In 1995, Amazon was not here. That's how much change has taken place since then. We never anticipated that 3D printing would be available. And today, 3D printing is one of the key elements in being able to recreate historical issues. But yet, that technology is not allowed. New synthetic materials that are applied and used in many other historical districts around the nation aren't allowed, even though their properties would enhance the facilities and would enhance those things that we're trying to preserve. We can now transplant 12-inch diameter trees, but yet we can't cut down a tree that's 4 inches in diameter, 4 feet from the surface, from the ground, without a COA and approval. It's interesting to me, and I deeply appreciate Ms. Turco's assessment of the historical district, because as you can see, the district has several corners and twists and turns that were never anticipated. I'm really excited to see Helen Walton on tonight, because I suspect that Helen Walton and myself were the only two people that were there the night that it was adopted and spoke to the city council when the original historical district was planned. I spoke to the issue about Edgewood. It was not to be included. Nobody can tell me why the service station on Trollinger Street was included, but not its next door neighbor. Nobody can tell me why my property at 713 East Willowbrook is not included, but yet my property is. The only reason is because the lots that when my father originally bought the property in the 20s, there were 9 different lots. He combined them and they went through from Davis Street to Edgewood. 78% of the property that we're discussing today is vacant. Not a structure on them, and completely vacant. Yard, mowed grass. Let's look at 1022 West Davis Street. The house was originally designed by Martin Boyer, an architect in Charlotte, built by my father in the late 20s, 1930. It completely surrounds the property of 713 East Willowbrook, which is our property as well, and our guest house. So let me explain it to you this way. I can stand with 1 foot in the historical district and 1 foot outside the historical district on my property and cut down a 4-foot tree in diameter on one side, and I can't prune a bush that I planted a month ago on the other side without a certificate of appropriateness. Are we really adding value there? Does that make a lot of sense? I would suggest that it doesn't. It's amazing to me that the ability to discuss things are null and void. And my reason for saying that is because unless I make an application to do something, we can't discuss what could not, should not, will or will not happen. That's the only way it works under the current standards. So I think that we have certainly lost the ability to use common sense. Those of you who came to the property tour and there were no questions asked, I begged the historical committee to let's discuss what the issues are and let's see if we can't find some common ground. I repeated that and went back to the city fathers and suggested that, and even met with individual city council members expressing that very same thing. The HPC committee today is caught in an impossible place to try to fit every single application with the standards by which you have to use. And if they fit those standards, then you can easily approve it. If they don't fit those standards, then you have to figure out a variance from those standards. So everything you do has to fit inside those standards. Or when you create a variance, you actually create a new standard. The time, the cost, the bureaucracy of continuing to be in a historical district threatens the very economic viability of the district. I happen to be building two 400,000 square foot buildings today, one in Norlina, North Carolina, and one in Anderson, South Carolina. The price of steel has tenfold gone up in the last 4 months, tenfold. There are two projects that I want to do at 1022. Both of them are so expensive that they're no longer viable. It's just a fact of life. I can't change that. If I want to use the original product, then that's it. And you've all discussed the Presbyterian Church. So precedent has been set. Matter of fact, Helen Walton signed the recommendation from the HPC to the City Council to approve removing the Presbyterian Church from the commission, from the historical district. And so that bubble has been broken. There aren't any incentives. There are no tax incentives. There's nothing to abate the cost that we have. I think the Robertsons stated it quite well. Let's take 1010 for a moment. When Mr. Burke, we called him Uncle Burke, got Parkinson's disease in the 1950s, there was no further maintenance done on that building. And when their daughter Helen returned from Washington and lived there for many, many years, there was no maintenance done. And in fact, when she died a couple of years ago, the city condemned the building. The roof had a leak 3 feet in diameter, and the structure was unsound and unsafe. 2 contractors just declined to work on the building because it was unsafe for their workers. So we bought the property because we wanted to protect 1016. And now it's vacant. But it's an example of here in the middle of a district, a house and home deteriorated to the point that it was condemned by the city and had to be torn down. And yet nothing was done to help that property owner achieve the value that could be there. If anybody thinks that we want to do something that is going to detract from value, then I think you ought to take a hard look at what we have done so far. I don't know of any properties that have been worked on any harder than what we have done. And in fact, Glen Raven just spent tens of millions of dollars repairing a 1900 building that my grandfather built at Glen Raven to now become the #1 design center in the world. We understand heritage. We understand what it means to have heritage. We are believers.
Mr. Gant, I'm sorry to do this, but I'm gonna have to put a time limit. I appreciate your comments, but I gotta let the Robinsons also talk, and I don't want to have to put a time limit on. And so I do apologize, but I can't. This can't go on for a very long time.
Mr. Yost, we'll yield the rest of our time to Mr. Gant.
Well, it's not really about yielding. So there's a lot that needs to get done and maybe other public comments. So I want to kind of keep this moving. I don't want it to drag out. That's not saying it is. I'm just saying I don't want it to drag out. I want this to go smoothly.
Sure. And just from our standpoint, we are committed to being on this call as long as needed. And we want to hear the comments from the public and from our neighbors who are concerned. So we're committed to being here as late as we have to be.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's just when it comes to comments, I like facts. Let's get to what you need to say, and that's not me being mean. That's just that's also if he would. So
like me to do?
If you are finished, or if you want to wrap it up, if you can, I would appreciate it, because I really need to keep this moving. And we have a lot of people, I think, that want to talk. If, and the commission members may want to ask questions. I know the Robinsons want to ask us questions. So I'm just thinking of a timely, efficient manner. That's all I'm asking.
I think if we look at this, you will understand that we have lost the common sense approach. We have asked to sit down and go over the issues. The standards that are being used have not been updated since 1995. And they will not be updated probably for the next year. And you are not standing in the place of having to replace a roof that could cost as much as $250,000. That's the last quote we got for the roof. Now, so we have no alternative. If we want to protect our property, then this is where we are. And I could give you the facts about how this started from interruption from the city, similar to the story that you heard from the Robertsons on their letter concerning stop and desist, but I didn't do that. I think the issue is if you want to have, if the community, and I'm in favor of that, want to have a historical committee, then the city has to budget and be prepared to invest every single year in order to make this happen. And if by updating the standards has been caused because we asked to be removed, then I'm happy with that. Instead of us working together and trying to improve the community, we're not, and that's unfortunate. I'd be glad to give my written comments to Jamie so she can include them.
And that will work too. It's whichever. I'm fine with that. So if you are completed, then I'll let the Robinsons do theirs. Mr. Gant. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel really bad about what just happened. And a point that we would like to make before we get into questions is, since our application was submitted in June of last year, we've come before this commission 5 times. We've come to every meeting, we've come to special work sessions, and we've showed up to those meetings saying, we're here to answer questions about our application. And we haven't gotten any questions from the commission. And yet we're very willing to have a dialogue, and we hope that that can happen tonight. That's why I think it's unfortunate that Mr. Gant wasn't able to complete his statement. I think it's important for the community to hear the dialogue too. We do have some questions for you, but we hope that you also have some questions for us, because we haven't gotten any in 9 months about our application.
Yes, and in regard to the dialogue, as I have said, there's a difference between keeping on going into the point. I like things to the facts and there.
Okay. So you're ready to get into the questions.
Yeah, I'm ready. And I understand, and again, that's not my intention to not let you speak.
No.
I just,
It's also important that we let members of the public who are here to this meeting also have time to speak. So I'd endorse moving along if we can.
Yep, we're all ready for this to move along, I'm sure. So just a few questions. The commission seems very concerned that if our applications are approved, that it's going to cause this ripple effect within the district, and that other property owners might also seek LHO amendments for their property. And I have to say that after reading all of the letters that were submitted regarding our applications, and Jamie commented on the number of them tonight, it seems like the community and property owners within the district are very passionate about the district and committed to it, and also haven't shared the negative experiences that we've had. So we just wanted to ask the commission, what gives rise to the concern that if our applications are approved, that you're going to have a slew of other applications also submitted? Because it seems like you have a lot of support within the community.
any commission members have any questions on that?
This will be a precedent-setting act. The church, the Presbyterian Church, has been cited. That, of course, is a structure of an entirely different character, an entirely different era, as Helen Walton pointed out. So this would set precedent. This is also a fairly unprecedented act in North Carolina, so far as we can tell. And so we're just being really careful about the precedent that we're setting here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we understand that the commission, of course, wants to protect the district and the property owners. In regards to the church, you'll find some information about that property in the report that Ms. Turco supplied, and it's really interesting to read. When the paperwork for the National Registry was submitted, the Presbyterian Church was listed as a contributing property for the formation of the boundary lines, and so it was significant when the boundaries were formed. And there's also pretty long history that was shared property.
A lot longer than most of the applicants' description of their property.
In reading the draft letter that the commission has started, you stated that removing these properties from LHO will have a deleterious effect on the neighborhood. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I had to Google that word. I did not know it, but I now know that the definition of deleterious is to cause harm or damage. And of course, that's the last thing we would want to do to our neighbors or to other homeowners in the area. And we were just wondering if you could be a little bit more specific about what is it in our application that would harm our neighbors.
So I would point again to the precedence issue and the concerns about setting precedent in the neighborhood and the potential for other cascading effects that would result from this.
And my whole thing is, we allow you to do it and everybody else does it. Well, you might keep stuff historic, but somebody else might want to paint it hot pink or do what they want to. You know, that to me is, I'm not saying anybody would, but that's what could happen. That's to me what could happen. You know, sure, y'all will keep it historical, but somebody, if they remove it, might say, oh, I'm gonna paint it whatever I want to paint. I'm gonna add what I want to paint. Then to me, that ruins our Burlington neighborhood. Not saying it would happen, but it could happen.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only concern. That's the only thing that's my one issue with this.
And there's no doubt. So hear me clearly, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, on this. You've been exemplary property owners, but you won't own this property in perpetuity. And that's also one of the things that we have to be concerned about.
And the other thing I would add is that was added to the letter, not in a vacuum. That was a decision based off of reading the recommendations of the report that was made and then the review of that by the state. That's not something that the members of the commission sat down and made that decision based on our own thoughts or feelings about what might or might not happen. It was based off of the recommendations that were made by other parties.
And after
Part, at
hearing,
least.
okay, yes, thank you. After hearing from Ms. Turco tonight, and her bringing some more specifics to her report in person, does your comfort level change when she says that while it might erode a portion of the district, you'd still have a cohesive district without these properties and it would still be considered intact?
I guess what I would point, and unless I'm misunderstanding something, I still believe that the recommendation of that report was that the request be denied. And Ms. Turco can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I thought that that's my understanding, that that's what the overriding message of the report. Is that not the case, Ms. Turco?
That's the recommendation. That's our recommendation to you.
Does this commission intend to advocate for the expansion of the NRHP boundary lines as is recommended by the consultant who was hired for the recent architectural survey that was conducted in 2021?
I can respond. I think it's premature to say whether we would or wouldn't. I think it would be likely, or we could anticipate that the commission would concur with a recommendation like that from such a consultant. But we have not deliberated the report, et cetera.
And just for our understanding, is that what sets the stage for the expansion of the local historic district? First, it's the NRHP designation boundary lines, and then the city can assign a historic overlay to a portion of that or the boundary lines.
There is a process for that. Jamie can elaborate a little further, I think, perhaps.
Jamie, you're muted. I'm muting myself.
Happens to all of us.
I was so patiently listening to you all. So is your question relative to the boundary expansion for the National Historic District and what that process is, or the local historic district?
Well, I think we're a little unclear about procedures there, and it seems like the establishment of the NRHP boundaries in 1984 set the stage for then the formation of the local district. And so just for some clarity, that happens first, and then the city can make a decision about whether or not to apply a local historic overlay.
I guess that was how it was how it occurred in the 80s in terms of and there might be others on the call who were members of the public who were part of that process per se. But yes, that is my understanding of how it occurred back then. If there is a expansion or alteration to the local historic district, we would follow the same process that we're following right now in terms of, your request is to be removed, but if there was a request to be added, we would have to go through the same process with an investigation report. And certainly I would think that there would be reference to if the properties were in a national historic district or not, and in terms of their significance, but that would follow the same process that we're following right now: an investigation report, recommendation from HPC, Planning and Zoning Commission review, and recommendation in City Council.
Okay, thank you. in regards to the North Carolina general statutes, which is asking this commission, or the state's response to the consultant's report directs the commission to review cause for the applications. And in the draft letter that you started, you have stated that you don't feel like that there's any reason for cause. There's no cause that's been established for our application. And so we're wondering that, if the details that Patrick provided tonight, if they don't meet your criteria for cause, what criteria have you established? What would meet your criteria?
The details that Mr. Robinson shared tonight are actually not part of the application.
Well, that's true. And the application is a single page form that was, an uneditable document that I had to bring into Photoshop to add text to, or I handwrite on that document. And my understanding, as Jamie explained it at previous meetings, was that initiated this whole investigative process. It initiated the city hiring a consultant that spoke to the applicants and summarized our concerns. So you're right, the detail is not in the application, but it's been here all along, and we shared it with Ms. Turco.
Hey, oh, sorry. Are y'all?
Chair Ulis, I'd be eager to hear from the public at this point, I think, and I don't want to cut anybody else off, but I think it's fair to allow members of the public now to comment.
That's fine.
That concludes our questions. We did want to know if you had questions for us about our application.
So I'm going to hold off for the moment, and we may come back to that.
Okay, thank you.
So as far as raising the hands, it looks like Yvonne Whitley. Jamie, I'm going to recognize her to speak.
Okay, Conrad, are you able to unmute her?
I've unmuted, I think. I was able to do that. Yes, hi, my name is Yvonne Whitley, and I live at 607 West Davis Street. I've lived here for over 8 years, almost 9 years. And just wanted to start off by saying that all of the properties that are being listed, requested for removal, are remarkable and well-maintained and beautiful. And to be honest with you, that is probably a very strong reason why there's a great desire to keep you in the district, because you well represent it. And I've had the pleasure of observing the Robinsons' property when it was acquired, and the things that you've done visibly outside. I've taken walks while your roof was getting done. I see the hard work that you put into it, and I think being a neighbor and a member of the West Davis Fountain Place Historic District, I share your passion as well, and many people do, whether they live in the district or not. And one thing that I would want to share is that, I don't want you to misconceive that the COA process has been easy for others as well. And actually, to the contrary, I've spoken with neighbors who live close to me, one who's been here almost 25 years, another who's been here his whole life and had to submit COAs, and they've gone through, when the other administrations, they've gone through struggles too. And myself, I had a roof application that I went back and forth to I think 5 times. I just started to think I was just a regular member of the team because I kept coming back. So I understand the frustration and the challenge that can be when you don't have that information, and you don't know how to approach it. And it would be great to have some dialogue, some conversation, some sharing of ideas. And so I understand how you feel. One of the things that came out of my multiple visits and just other opportunities to speak with the Historic Planning Committee is, one of the recommendations I made is, can we get a list of service providers who have dealt with historic homes and maybe would have that expertise, so that, because we're all facing the same issues, we can share this and learn and, make it easier for one another. And it was a liability concern, but over time, it was that they found a way to adopt it. So essentially, from my communication and participation and sharing, we were able to get to a point where I was able to make an impact on something that I think is positive. And other people were going to be able to speak who are part of the nonprofit Burlington Preservation Group, and I'll allow them to speak a little bit more about that. I just wanted to share my experience, but I understand your frustration. You were met with a series of unfortunate events due to China tariffs, tariffs on steel coming from Canada. I deal with importing, so I see that. Then COVID, you were really hit with a multitude of negative situations. But I really see that what's come about at this moment with the forecasting of the guidelines having the opportunity to be updated, and it's spoken that a contract is imminent, and Ms. Turco did state that she anticipates by mid-2022 having those guidelines updated. So they, in my opinion, know more, they're touching it more than I am. I think that can happen. And if we, as the interested parties, communicate and participate and express our concerns and our desires and our needs for these upgrades, maybe we can make that happen to the benefit of everyone within the historic district. So that's what I wanted to contribute and say.
Chair Ulyss, before you get to other comments, I guess what I would like to see is maybe a raise of hands of the members of the panelists and the attendees, so we can get a feel for how many out there want to address the commission, so we can
So
either
I've
decide
got,
on a time limitation or not.
I've got 4, well, now 5. I'm writing down who's raising their hands. There's a lot of people. And since I've got 5 people that wish to speak at the moment, well, 6 now.
It looks like you've got 7 people in the panelists right now, and then 2 in the attendees list. So I've got Sue Lazara, and I'm not going to say these in order. Probably you might have a different order. Sue Lazara, Jim Clark, Michelle Kay, Ian Baltutis, Faith Grant, Molly Whitlatch, Christy Benson. I think that's it for the panelists. So that's 7.
Okay. Yeah,
and then 2 in the attendees list.
Yeah, I have as Jim Clark next, and then Sue Lazar, Michelle K, Ian, Faith, Christy, and then Molly. That's just my list that I was in order, if that's okay, Jamie, or do you?
Yeah, and I guess I would also just add too, as we're talking, if any members of the public want to submit their comments, written comments to staff or the HPC, you can certainly do so as well. And Conrad, if we can put our emails in the chat so folks know where to do that.
So Jamie, I'm going to go ahead and ask this. I know this is something we didn't want to do, but if it's okay with you, I want to make a motion, and with the board, to do a time limit on speaking to a minimum of 3 minutes. That given everybody a chance to speak, and that way I think that would be fair. Is that something I can do, or ask for a motion? Right?
Yeah, maximum of 3 minutes.
Okay, Jamie, am I good to ask for a motion?
It's your meeting, Chair.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right. Okay. All right.
I'll be happy to keep time if you want me to, but
would you? I just think this will probably make it easy for everybody. This is again for everybody. We're gonna. All right. So HPC members, I need a motion to approve a 3-minute time limit on public speaking.
So moved, Brian Pennington.
Okay. Do I have a second?
A second. Lori
Okay.
Brown.
Jamie, will you do a roll call vote for me, please?
it looks like
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Christina. Could we factor into that also? And I saw Conrad's note in the chat that folks are welcome to share full written comments or a fuller version of what they might have hoped to say if it extends beyond the 3 minutes with city staff.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I'm thinking of giving everybody a fair chance to speak. So I'm fine with that. Kristen, that's fine. So I guess we'll do let me redo that motion. So motion for 3 minutes with the idea that any comments can be submitted through the and if everybody will note that Jamie has put in her email and phone if you have additional more than 3-minute time limit. So, okay, I think I had a first and a second, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Jamie, will you do a roll call vote for me,
Sure.
please?
Yep. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So Jamie, whenever you're ready to start the clock, I'll call on Jim Clark, 'cause I think he was next in my list.
Sure. Once he starts speaking, I'll go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Clark, I'm hereby acknowledging you to speak. You got 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you allowing me to speak, and I won't be 3 minutes. I just have a couple of comments to make. But first of all, I want to say to Mr. Gant and to Emily and Patrick, I have a selfish reason for not wanting you to leave, and that is because the work that you've done on your places has just been remarkable. Patrick has about worked me to death because I try to keep up pretty hard, but then he came to town and I really had to back up. So they've really done a beautiful job over there. And of course, Mr. Gant for years has been involved with historic preservation. His company has, his whole family has. And I think we need to listen to what he has to say about some things we need to do with the Historic Commission. And that is that we need to bring it up. We don't, because we are in the historic district, we don't have to have a historic commission acting like we are historic or prehistoric. You know, we're in 2022 now, and things are changing rapidly, as he pointed out by mentioning Amazon. But we need to look at something about it. I understand where they're coming from. I've been through this for 17 years of, you know, getting permissions and getting things done and having to wait a few days and all that. In fact, I just went through one and I've got that, but I got that approved. But it was fairly easy. But I certainly understand, believe me. But and I'm not mad at any of you for leaving, except you have such beautiful places. I'm proud that you're in the district, and that would be my only thing. So, but I do think we need to upgrade the way the commission works. We need to make it more expedient, and so that it takes less time to get these things done. We need to look at some of these modern materials that are coming along now that are much longer lasting than various wood products that we use. Things are not going to affect the look of the place, but we need to start looking at some of those things. So that's all I had to say, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak. Thank you.
All right, you just about 30 seconds left. So good job, sir.
Okay, so I'm gonna next call Sue Lazara. And Sue, if you could make sure would you state your name and address for me, just for the record?
Yes, I'm Sue Lazara. I'm at 727 West Davis. Want to thank the commissioners for taking such a serious interest in this matter. I have admired the properties in question very often before this came to my attention. I will say that I have a long background in historic preservation and in renovating properties and in gauging the values within historic districts and reading studies about historic district overlay effects. And I fully concur with the consultants and with the letters from the state and Preservation North Carolina that there is a significant effect to our property values when a district boundary is changed and constricted. I believed that for 40 years, and I have operated on it to get my retirement income. The other thing I want to say is that standards for historic preservation are not local. They don't come from here. They don't come from the state of North Carolina. They don't even come only from our federal government, but that's our enabling legislation. These are international standards that have been used for hundreds of years around the world. And the United States has come later to the game, but these standards are intentionally flexible. And this Historic Preservation Commission, I'm sure many of you realize it already, you have flexibility to incorporate modern materials already. That doesn't have to be codified in your local standards. There's nothing prohibiting it, and the national standards already allow it. So these things are, I think, misunderstood. As far as the zoning boundary that Mr. Gant brought up about having two properties with two different zonings, every zoning overlay has a boundary. He just happens to be own properties on both sides of that boundary. But this is not unusual. These boundaries exist everywhere around every historic district overlay. So there has to be a boundary for there to be an overlay. And I think we've all agreed tonight that that's a good thing. And the next time the Robinsons have an issue like their roof leak and they feel like they don't have time, what I suggest is get a contractor that's going to warp your roof professionally. I had mine done when I moved here because I had the same problem, had a lot of roof and ceiling damage. And my roofing contractor came and took care of that so that I would have the 2 weeks required.
That's 3 minutes, ma'am.
Before the commission. Thank you.
So there we go. All right. So our next guest is Michelle Kay. And Michelle, if you would please state your name and address for the board, and you've got 3 minutes.
Am I off mute?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Michelle Kobrick, 715 West Front Street. That's the old Dr. T.W. Patterson house that many people called the Easter egg house. It was the one that was purple, lavender, blue, and yellow, one of the few remaining Queen Anne's that we are restoring. As much as I would like very much to invite Mr. Gant and the Robinsons to get involved with the new standards as they develop, and if they're aware of new technologies and new materials and different ways of doing things that would still enhance and protect the home's integrity, by all means, bring it up. You know, it's easier to leave than it is to stay and change it. Number one. Number two, I agree with Mr. Gant that the city needs to invest in personnel to help us. I personally would like to see a dedicated historic planner hired by the city, even if it was part-time, even if it was 2 days a week, and it was someone we could go down and talk to and say, I've got this problem with my porch. What kind of materials are there available? Could I use something different? Is there a different way to go about this so the porch doesn't rot again in another 2 years? And those kinds of questions. And yes, all of their properties are pristine. They are gorgeous. They are beautifully maintained, exquisitely, aesthetically appropriate to the period of their homes, but they're not going to live there forever. This is our 5th restoration. Every single one we said, this is the last one. And we've done it again. So what I would impress upon the commission is that if you change it, you change the entire possibilities of that neighborhood forever, and you can't turn it back. So I'd ask the Robinsons and Mr. Gant to exert their pressure instead on the city council and on the new city manager to invest some money and some personnel into our historic preservation district and all historic preservation in Burlington. And please put our tax dollars to work for us. And we would heartily appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Next person I have in order is Mr. Ian Baltutis. And Ian, if you would please state your name and address for the record, and you got 3 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Ian Baltutis. I live at 702 West Davis Street, or the E.L. Morgan House. Lived here since 2018 and have enjoyed the sense of community and the support from my fellow historic preservation members and homeowners in the community. It was a huge selling feature why I wanted to move to this part of Burlington. And I appreciate everyone's part in this discussion. I think if there's anything this highlights, it is that the solutions in front of us. It's the need to update the design guidelines, and that will truly make this whole experience for all of us better. I apologize about the dog in the background. She loves the historic house as well. And I think in Burlington, I've had the honor to work as a homeowner and a general contractor around the country. And I've seen in Burlington that we've had this nice balance between maintaining the historic preservation, but also that kind of streamlined flow and not making it too burdensome or too complicated. I went through a similar experience like the Robinsons with a leaky roof. I think we've all had our share of those in the historic district. And going through the COA requirement for a major was a lot less trouble than all the work I did chasing around with a bucket of tar on the roof trying to find that roof leak beforehand. It's painful. It's to get a roof done. It's expensive, but I appreciate the support that I got from the historic preservation process in helping select good materials and helping move my home closer to its historic heritage. And I thank everyone's support in moving us towards that better process. I think if anything, what I heard here is an argument to enlarge the district, not shrink it, especially with the way that it allows people to access tax credits and new grants. And again, that shared knowledge and support to continue the historic preservation process. So that's what I've seen around the country, and that's why I urge Burlington move towards. I think we have found common ground. We've already found it. It's here. It's updating design guidelines. We can all agree that needs to get done, and that'll make all of our lives easier. So why make it more complicated? Let's build the assets for the community. So let's move past the exaggerations and other weird statements and towards the camaraderie of building a stronger historic district community. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Next on my list is Faith Grant. Is she? No, I don't see her. Is she still on here?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. my eyes are about to give out. All right, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Faith Grant. I live at 911 West Davis Street. I'm basically 2 doors down from the Robinsons and 3 doors down from Mr. Gant. My husband and I bought this property in 2016, and I would dare say that in that time frame, our district looked much different than it does now. A lot of the homes were not well maintained. Ours was pretty original to the last update they did in the late 60s. And we had a lot of work ahead of us. And I don't disagree with the frustrations that have been shared from the Robinsons and from Mr. Gant. I think that, the process is slower than we would all like, but that is the process that I was aware of when I purchased the home. So it wasn't anything that I guess I felt was warranted in being too frustrated about, since I knew what I was getting into when I purchased the property. It sounds like the main concern is governmental process and not necessarily the quality of craftsmanship that's required from a COA or anything to that regard. So I guess to my point of the applications, it sounds like the resolution could be had with working with the city and the government to update the guidelines and make the process faster, more streamlined, and more straightforward. And, aside from that, I think legal precedent is very important in this case, which is why I have taken such a passion to try to keep the district intact and to also keep, my home and the quality that it is. If there's one precedent set of residential properties leaving the district, then there's not really any legal reasoning why anyone else could ever be denied, no matter where they were located from the district. So those are my primary concerns, and I hope that this will lead to the applicants considering maybe working towards fixing the challenges instead of just leaving. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next on my list is, if I say this name wrong, I apologize, Christy Benson.
That's right. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you. If you would please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for being willing to stay late and hear all of us speak. I'm Christina Benson. I might be the newest historic district residents. I bought the house from Hannah and Josh at 622 West Davis Street. And I walk my dog by the Gant's house and the Robinson's house and have admired it, both of their houses. And I certainly can relate to some of what they're saying, but I would like to echo some of what Ian and Faith said in saying that it sounds to me like there's a lot of common ground here, and that we really need to update design standards, and especially to find an expedited way to kind of get rid of some of the red tape. And so far, the only thing I've had to do is update the fence in my backyard, and I found Jamie very helpful, and she was able to expedite it very quickly. So no problems there, but I do understand if it's a much more major repair, like replacing a roof, that could be different. I really want to emphasize in my short time what Faith said about how important it is that this is legal precedent. And so the theme I would like to keep hitting on is we don't need to take the nuclear option here. You know, taking homes out of the historic district is truly a nuclear option compared to, you know, what other alternatives are available, especially when there's such legal precedent. I mean, this is a zoning overlay. And the reason I specifically bought a house in the West Davis Historic District was to take advantage of that zoning overlay and the design standards and the uniformity and historic character of the neighborhood. And so I think it would set a horrible legal precedent that would come back to haunt you for many, many moons to come, decades to come. You would leave a huge, giant mess in your wake as a commission to recommend letting them do, you know, letting somebody just secede from the district. Not only in terms of property values, but when you if you say yes to this request, then if anyone else comes down the line and has a similar request, you have to say yes, because otherwise then you get into an equal protection argument potentially. You potentially get into something that can open a can of worms that's similar to spot zoning cases that get challenged because, you know, a property that's in the midst of an area with a different character is allowed to rezone. And then you get into the problem that's been mentioned about how this is in perpetuity. And some of these lots are already vacant. And if you take these vacant lots, let alone the lots that have houses built on them, and you move them out of the historic designation, and then these folks move on. I know they don't, I mean, their homes are beautiful, but once they move on, anybody could build a monstrosity on the remaining properties and not be held accountable to the neighborhood. So the last thing I want to mention is the comprehensive plan. This commission and the Planning Commission and the City Council are really supposed to follow the words of the comprehensive plan. And
I'm sorry, your time is up.
I don't have time to read them to you, but I can send them in a letter after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and the final speaker, as I say, is Molly Whitlatch. Molly, if you will state your name and address for the record for me.
Molly Whitlatch, 912 West Davis Street. And I don't have a lot to add. I totally echo all of Christy Benson's comments. The real threat here is the piecemeal dismantling of the district and the legal precedent. And the guidelines aren't just about keeping a house pretty. They're about maintaining the historic integrity. And once properties start to lose their historic integrity, it absolutely affects the property values around them. So to the question about when the process started, I was on the commission, and I would say it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when we started the process of seeking new guidelines. It first required a survey update, and that's done, and they're now on to the process of the guidelines. But this is something that was recognized several years ago. It just took a while to get those steps completed. But I will say that even under the existing guidelines, there's a good degree of flexibility. The guidelines don't require a COA to prune bushes. And, the Robinsons were allowed to use composite modern replacement materials in their recent application for windows. So it's not as if this isn't ever permitted. Additionally, there's several examples where the commission has approved replacement of an original roof structure like a slate or concrete or a vintage metal roof. And with replacement materials, there's a process where the State Historic Preservation Office can weigh in on what would be an appropriate replacement material if you have a roof that is failing, that is cost prohibitive to replace. So I think there's other avenues here that haven't been explored. But again, back to the main point, this is about the neighborhood. A district is about the entire neighborhood, not just about a couple individual property owners. And in fact, 2 of these properties are owned by an international corporation. Nobody lives there. So, it's disingenuous, I think, to say that Glen Raven, who on its website says it has 46 locations in 22 countries on 5 continents, is not able to maintain its property within the guidelines. So I'm asking the commission to recommend that these applications not be approved.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment before I move on?
I believe Sarah Vincent had her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay. Sorry about that. I think I was admitted as a panelist and my hand raising went away. So.
Oh, no problem. If you'll just state your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Vincent at 706 West Davis. And, I don't want to repeat anything that anybody's already said, but I will say that, in moving to Burlington, I think we've been here about 8 years. We did make it a goal long-term to own a historic house, and finally achieved that dream a couple of years ago when we moved into 706. And we had been in a neighborhood in Tampa that was also on the historic side, but had no preservation, no oversight, no guidelines, no nothing. We had a 1939 house. We updated it, we cared for it. And it's really sad because we went back there a few years ago and actually just a few months ago, and nearly every house is either renovated beyond repair or gone. And so, we're in a situation in less than 15 years where an entire historic neighborhood, a piece of Tampa history is completely changed, and there's no way to get that back. So we were very, cognizant of the fact that when we bought a house here, we weren't just buying it to have a house. We were buying it to be a part of history, to be a part of a community, and to really, take care of this house for the long term, for the future, not just to get what we wanted out of it today. And so I actually really appreciate and love that we're now at this point where we're going to be hopefully looking at the guidelines, looking at some changes to those with some urgency, because I think that that's going to give us all, the renewed confidence and energy to be able to take care of our properties the way that they should be taken care of, and to really bring us all together to make this an even stronger district if we can get through this. So I hope we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I don't see any other hands raised. Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment? No? Okay. So at this time, I would like to ask my vice chair, Mr. Brian Pennington, to present the Historic Preservation Subcommittee's report. And this is on page 130 in the binder.
I wonder, Chair Ulis, can we give the applicants just a couple of minutes to respond?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. No problem.
Fair to allow them a moment to speak.
Yeah, no problem.
Alan, why don't you go first?
I appreciate everybody's candor. I appreciate the manner in which they've been spoken. It's interesting to me that it takes this type of action in order for conversations to be had. One of my main points is that we have lost the sense of common sense and sitting down and working things out. Few of us understand the cost that are currently being incurred for some of the changes and some of the upgrades that have to be done. And so if anything, we have created an environment in which conversation can be had, that's great. But I don't think we take our pressure off until we see the results. And I think we preserve that. And we want results. Lots of the spheres that have been talked about are what ifs. And Molly, you're exactly right. Glen Raven is 142 years old. And I suspect it will be around longer than most of the property owners that are currently there. And, you know, we understand that heritage and we respect that heritage. But I think we also all have to step back from the fire and understand that what's right and what is wrong. Our particular property does have some unusual things to it. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can explain why it's the way it is. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. But it does present the opportunity by which to have the conversation. And if we're so far along that we can't have the conversation, then we got real problems. I think this is an issue in which the city really has to decide, are they willing to make the investment? If we're not willing to invest as a community, then we don't have much of anything. And you all are left in that impossible position. It's interesting that we're having this conversation. This has been going on for more than a year. And I don't have a single one of the other HPC or this HPC that have any questions for us, for me. No questions. So I take it that your minds are committed as opposed to exploring possible opportunities. I don't know that, but that's the perception that I have. I think we all keep pushing, and hopefully we'll end up with a better community, whatever that might look like.
And I think we'd just like to say that we really appreciate the dialogue that our neighbors brought to this meeting tonight. And we think it's important for a community, and it doesn't happen often enough. And it's unfortunate that it's you know, this perception of this problem that's erupted within our neighborhood that has spurred these conversations. We fully agree. Everyone on this call agrees that the standards are out of date. And if they were last majorly updated in 1995, Ms. Turco's report recommends at least every 10 years they'd be substantially updated. The UDO, that's the, you know, the laws of Burlington state that they should be updated every 5 years. And so if that's the case, they should have been updated 5 times since 1995. And we should be working on the 2025 update. So that's, I think, a huge concern for the applicants is we're happy that that's in motion, but what happens next? And we realize that there's been grant funds allocated for this, and maybe the funds are not available in the city budget to do it. But what's gonna continue to keep these standards updated with modern times and technology that's changing overnight? They could really do a lot to protect these properties and preserve them.
All right. Are there any more questions? Are we all good? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go back to asking Vice Chair Brian Pennington to present the HPC subcommittee report. And if anybody's following along, this is on page 130.
Thank you, Chair Ulyss. On January the 28th, the subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Commission that consisted of myself, Russ Vandermouse Peeler, and Christina Meinking met to draft a letter that would frame the report that the HPC would submit to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is the next city body to act on these applications to remove the properties. In that subcommittee meeting, we took a straw poll to understand if there was consensus on whether to recommend approval or rejection of those applications. The subcommittee found consensus on recommendations to reject these applications and composed a letter. That letter is in the meeting packet, and I call it to everybody's attention if they would like to consult it for this meeting. I would like to move this letter as the basis for a conversation in the HPC to begin to finalize a response to the city. So I think our first vote should be on whether to approve this letter as the basis for HPC deliberation. It's coming from this subcommittee, so it does not need a second. And so, Chair Ulyss, I think maybe we call for discussion at this point. Is there discussion of the letter by the commission members?
Yes. So would any commission members like to discuss the letter? Yeah. Okay. All right. So with no discussion, then since there's a motion to approve the
letter as the basis for discussion, because the next step would be to ask if there are revisions, additions, deletions would recommend.
Okay. So a motion to approve the letter. Before, I wasn't
as the basis for
there we go. As the basis for it. There you go. Get the idea. I'm sorry. It's so I need a motion.
I think it's already been moved because it's coming from a subcommittee.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think now we just need to vote.
Okay. Jamie, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
No, it looks like he's frozen.
Josh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Is that yes in favor of moving this
Yes.
as the basis? Okay. And then Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so the motion passes unanimously. Are there, from commission members, suggestions for editorial revisions, additions, or deletions from the letter?
I don't have any.
Hearing none, I have two that I'd like to, I think, do I have the ability to share my screen, Jamie?
Yes.
I have two additions. The first one is simply to itemize for the Planning and Zoning Commission and then for City Council what is included in this report. So let me share my screen. And so in red, you will see my recommended additions. It reads as follows. So this comes after the first full paragraph of the report. Included in this report, please find the following materials. This letter recommending rejection of the proposals from the Historic Preservation Commission. Secondly, the original property removal applications from property owners in the 1000 block of West Davis Street. Thirdly, the property removal study recommending rejection of these applications and a set of improvements to historic preservation processes in the city. Fourthly, a response from the State of North Carolina Historic Preservation Office recommending rejection of these applications. Fifth, correspondence consisting of 81 pieces from residents of Burlington and other interested parties, all recommending rejection of these applications. This correspondence includes, as of 6/18 this evening, 1 letter from Preservation North Carolina, 1 letter from Preservation Burlington, 43 letters from residents within the overlay district, the West Davis Fountain Place Historic District, 13 letters from residents in the Glencoe Historic District, and 23 letters from, I should say, Burlington residents outside of the historic district. So I move this, and I'm moving this individually, or proposing it individually. So I think it needs a second and any discussion to follow.
Russ Peeler, second.
Okay. Does it need a roll call vote?
Is there any discussion? Are there editorial changes people would suggest?
Vice Chair Pennington, I guess the only question that staff may have is, even during the course of this meeting, we've received a letter. So how would you like us to address any additional letters that come subsequent to your letter?
And I suppose those letters, or any letter that's coming right now, is coming to the HPC and not to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I would anticipate, so I'm thinking out loud here, that at the close of this meeting, if this letter passes, that is the official act of the HPC. No further letters can come to our attention officially at that point for inclusion in this report. And so I'm wondering if we include that letter in this report, but none after the adjournment of this meeting tonight.
I guess what I would suggest is your letter references all of the letters that have been received and are incorporated as part of your comments and correspondence. Any future letters that may be addressed to the HPC as part of this item would also be recognized, but not part of your memo.
Would they be then forwarded to the Planning Commission and the applicants?
Yes.
All right, so what language does that require us to change here, Jamie?
I don't think there's much to change in terms of your language, just a recognition that they would not be included as part of your report, since your report, assuming you adopt it tonight, is basically, February 8th at whatever time.
Yeah.
Anything else is not going to be included as part of your correspondence, but it would be recognized as part of the packet that would move forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Okay. So then I think this amendment to the letter stands as written.
Well, the minutes, and I'm not sure timing wise if they would be draft or final, but would the minutes from this meeting also be forwarded to Planning and Zoning?
Depending upon the timing of when the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is going to be held, it may not be possible for the minutes to be adopted by the Historic Preservation Commission. So they would be in draft format. And I guess those minutes per se would, recognize any comments that were taken tonight. So I would just suggest that the minutes be in a draft format, but we'll have to make it clear as an item moves forward, if it moves forward before you get to adopt them, that it would just be a draft.
So I could include a new item, the unapproved draft minutes from the February 8th, 9th?
8th.
Almost the ninth. Is it, would that also capture comments in the chat? I'm just trying to capture as much as possible all the way around.
Yeah, the only comments that, well, we will capture the chat comments. Those will come to us separately. I did screenshot, I guess, the comments from Christy Benton as well.
Thank you.
And I'm just going through now to also see if there was anything else.
Is there other language we should revise? So maybe Chair Ulyss, you want to call for a vote on this amendment?
Yes, sir, I will. So I need a motion to approve the amendment on the letter.
Moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Wendy Guys, second.
All right, Jamie, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermest Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Monking.
Yes.
Thank you. I have one other further revision to the letter, and it's given in number 5 here. So this revision is substantive. The last one was not. This revision just takes account of the correspondence that the HPC and the city received since the subcommittee met. And so these are the grounds for the HPC's recommendation of rejection of these applications. So numbers 1 through 4 are in the meeting packet. Number 5, which I'm proposing here, reads, the Historic Preservation Commission has received an overwhelming public response. Is it prepared to consider these applications for removal? To date, this overwhelming volume of correspondence is unanimous in urging rejection of these applications, the preservation of the integrity of the West Davis Fountain Place Historic District, and the protection of property values in the city of Burlington. We note that this correspondence indicates a very broad range of reasons, personal, legal, economic, ethical, and financial, that cannot be readily summarized in this report. And we urge the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council to review carefully this record of public opinion on this matter. So I present this for the Commission's consideration.
All right, so
Motion to approve that addition.
Okay. Do I have a second? Wait, I don't need a second.
I think you do need a second because
Okay,
this is
sorry.
individual.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, Jamie, will you do a roll call vote, please?
We can have discussion before there's a roll call vote, and it might be helpful to have people's eyes on this because I'm the only one who's seen this
Okay.
at this point. So it might be helpful to just have people, the commission members, read through it
Okay.
carefully and offer suggestions.
Wendy Guys, in my comment, I think it's very well worded. I think it's concise, and I think it's an important point.
Yes, the subcommittee did a really good job. So congratulations to you 3.
Have any suggestions for the addition amendment?
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. We could call for a vote at any point, I think.
Are there any more discussions from the commission members on this? or anything else to add? Okay, we're all good. All right, so Jamie, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. And so just so I'm clear, the vote is
The amendment.
the amendment and this and the HPC adopting, let's say, this letter, this memo as a whole.
Well, I think the current is just the whether or
Fifth
not
Amendment.
to accept this addition
Okay,
that Vice Chair Pennington added.
okay, thank you. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay. So now we are going to a motion to have this as the official, and my understanding, Vice Chair, this is the official, what will be sent to, we're all going to vote on, that will be sent to Planning and Zoning and City Council. Right. Am I on the right track? Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't see anything. Is there anything else before we do a final vote and we all agree to this?
Just have a quick question in terms of
Sure.
just making reference that this was prepared by the subcommittee and amended. I don't know if you want to use that word, but amended at tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would also just say that this, you may want to also remove the word draft once you finally adopt it.
So I think we need a motion to approve this letter in toto.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Wendy Geis, I move to approve the letter.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Jamie, will you do a roll call?
Yes.
Please.
Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay. And it is official.
Brian, if you could just send me the version without the track changes.
I will. I'll
Okay.
do that following the meeting, Jamie. May I take a point of privilege just to address all the people who've come to the meeting tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to members of the public for your input here. Thank you to the applicants. I'm only one commission member, and I would like to assure the applicants as we now proceed to revise the design standards that I will advocate for a deliberative process, a deliberative and inclusive process. I would concur that HPC process up until this point has not been, the process itself has not allowed for a lot of deliberation. It is one of the applicant's concerns. And following up on a lot of what we heard from members of the historic district tonight and other members of Burlington community, I think there is broad consensus that that is precisely what we need. And I really hope that the city and the HPC can pursue such a process going forward.
And I would just like to say thank you to the applicants for your time and understand, that this now goes to planning and city council. So whatever happens, that's, and, regardless, we do have the best interest in the historic thing at heart, that we don't, go all power. We want what's best for it. Or at least I know that's what I do. And I'm sure that will echo by anybody. We have a very beautiful historic district, and I think that's something we should be proud of. So I just want to say thank you to the Robinsons and Mr. Gant for your input on this long process. So.
Mr. Gant has his hand raised.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So thank you for your deliberation, and thank for everybody's work in a long process. Jamie, I think I will not send you my written comments. The HPC has given its official recommendation to the zoning commission. So I think it probably would be more appropriate, instead of for me to write directly to the zoning commission, so they have an understanding as to what I have written down here. None of the applicants' comments were included in that letter. So I think probably the cleanest thing to do is for me to do that. I don't know what the Robinsons will do, but so I'll just address a letter to the zoning commission board stating our case, or stating my case as to where we are and how we feel about things. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Jamie, would that be the recommendation for this next step, for us to prepare a written statement that summarizes some of the sentiments that we brought to this meeting, to provide context that'll be submitted alongside the commission's letter?
Well, I mean, the packet to the HPC will include your initial application, which included reasonings of why you're seeking to come out of the district. You can certainly provide additional correspondence and comments, and we will include those, as well as any other members of the public. We'll include whatever, comments, written comments that we receive in the packet that will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Also, the minutes will include summaries of your comments. But I think the next step is to address the Planning and Zoning Commission directly.
And those meetings, are the Planning and Zoning Commission is a public meeting. So you will certainly, and we will be doing, just so the members of the audience and everyone understand the process, that those meetings we're following the legislative process, and property owners, again, within 300 feet will receive letters. Those meetings are still, I believe, going to be held virtually, so we will still follow the same Zoom format. But at that time, when the matter is up in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicants will also have the opportunity to address the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as members of the public as well.
And so if we wanted a written statement to be included in the agenda packet, when would that be? When would we need that in order for it to be included?
If we are assuming we're moving forward in an expedited or efficient manner, the Planning and Zoning Commission would hear this item on, I believe it's the 28th of February. So the packets and the deadline for the distribution is next Friday, which I believe is the 18th. I'm trying to pull my calendar up, but I believe that's the 18th would be the deadline for when the packets go out to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And their meetings are at 7 o'clock, correct? Yeah.
I'd just like to add one quick thing, Mr. Gant. I know you didn't have a chance to give your full set of comments, and I understand your desire to pass those on to the zoning commission. As a member of the commission, I would welcome the opportunity to read your full comments. That's up to you whether or not you decide to share them with us.
Thank you.
And I'll just add one last thing regarding the packet for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and City Council. Those packets are also public information, so they will be placed on the city's website and available, you know, for downloading or viewing in advance of the meeting.
Okay. Well, I guess at this time, Jamie, do we move to other business? Correct.
Yeah, I think we're good to move on. I don't see any other hands raised or comments. So the last item for tonight is a very minor one. As usual, we include in the packet any minor COAs that were approved. So we've got 2 of those just for your reference.
Okay. All right. What else? All right, is there anything else? I don't have my agenda with me for some reason.
That's the last order of business that I have included.
Okay. And I guess since there's no other discussion, then I need a motion to adjourn for the evening.
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Jamie, will you do a roll call?
Sure. Chair Ulyss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pennington,
Yes.
Russ Vandermeer-Peeler,
Yes.
Josh Adkins,
Yes.
Wendy Geis,
Yes.
Lori Brine,
Yes.
and Christina Meinking.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, and we'll see where this goes. So hope everybody has a good weekend. I mean, not weekend, week. I wish it were the weekend. Anyway,
Take care.
goodbye, everybody.
All right.